Welcome back to Bazaar. I'm Eco, and Season 5 is launching tomorrow. As always, I like to take a look at the roundup of the new cards. Still not sure what to do about new heroes. The Mac didn't even try. I don't know if I'm going to try with Stell. But regardless, I do at least like going over my first impressions of the new cards for the existing heroes. So for today, let's cover the flying expansion for Dooley, originally revealed by Mr. Fruit. Link in the description, all credit to his original reveal. And for my first impressions, I've got to say, broadly, I don't quite get it. That's fine, though. Broadly speaking, the last two big expansions, when I first looked at them, I did not grok them. I did not understand what they meant. And eventually, it's like, oh, there's some pretty insane cards in these. So I assume that at some point, the same thing will click into place when I start playing the Dooley expansion. But for now, I see what the cards do, but my brain can't quite put it together as a package without playing it. First up, we have the new core for Dooley, the Launcher Core. As always, is a medium core tech. At silver, it's a 7-second speed, and it makes two other items start flying, which, to remind you, flying has, primarily, it's about other cards carrying that a card is flying, but it does have the passive effect of flying items suffer 50% less slow and freeze. That is, at least in my interpretation, generally icing on the cake. The reason you care about a card being flying is because other cards say they care about a card being flying, and we'll be showing that off more very shortly. It also charges your flying items 1 second. Whenever you use a friend or a flying item, charge this 1 second. So obviously this is really good for enabling flying on other cards, but why do we care about that? Well, moving right along, the Launchpad is one possible example. It's a medium property tech starting at silver tier. It is a 4-speed item that makes an item start flying. So again, you have redundancy for getting this effect. And it's very important anytime we see a silver card that interacts with flying or a bronze card that interacts with flying, because you pick your core before you see gold cards. There needs to be good incentive at low tiers to care about this, because I doubt there's enough consistency to blindly go into flying, similar to the, or at least similar to my current take on the Dino Core. But additionally, this has the very important passive effect. When you use a friend or flying item burn 2, that is a very strong effect to have. Dooley can turn that into an absolute load of procs, even in just a friend build, and I'm certain that you can go like 10-win diamond victory on a Launchpad build. It's just a matter of how consistent is it. How much does flying really matter outside of using it as a friend enabler? And I don't think as a baseline, burn 2 is incredible. But because there's the ability to scale this up, and I'm not talking about Ignition Core, I'm talking about just like increasing the base value of the burn rather tremendously, I think it's very strong. There's a very real chance that Launchpad is better in Ignition Core builds than Launcher builds, but this is just giving the character access to some flying and a reason to care about flying, and it's going to need the reason to care about flying to ever justify going into a Launcher Core. Moving on to more reasons to go into flying, we have Propeller Hat, a starting silver medium apparel and tech. At the start of each fight, your cores start flying, and when you use a flying item, haste an item for 1 second. So this can give you a ton of haste if you're playing with a Launcher Core, and popping back over to it, it will never make itself start flying, but it does charge your flying items 1 second. So Propeller Hat does actually work on the Launcher Core itself. It doesn't say charge your other flying items, which is very, very good for it. And yeah, that's just a really good source of haste. I don't have a lot more to say about that. If you're making things fly, Propeller Hat's going to do a lot of work. I will note that I'm less hype about this card in Dooley than I am about similar cards in Stell. That's basically down to the fact that in Stell, she was released with so many flight-based cards that I can just assume you're going to find stuff that starts flying and stops flying all over the shop. I can't make that assumption with, what is it, like 150 card Dooley these days? I don't know if I can assume you're going to be able to start, stop flying as regular triggers with Propeller Hat, or if that's actually a high roll. This might just be a couple of haste procs when it goes off, and the game is, at least it was, fast enough that just getting a couple of haste procs is probably good enough. But at the same time, this is much more enticing when you're able to say, oh, this is infinite haste for my whole board, but that's going to require triggers to stop flying. Once something is already flying, I'm pretty sure it can't start flying again. So this is slightly concerning in terms of like any sort of long-term defensive build. I don't know. It doesn't feel like a major problem, but I feel like the potential for a card like this in Dooley is much lower than in Stell, just due to the critical mass of flight items Stell is going to have. And one other flying enabler, probably my favorite of the bunch, the unstable Gravo. It's a medium tech, and it is an 8-second activation. All of your items start flying, destroy this, and an enemy item with no cooldown. And I'm going to be honest with you, destroying an enemy item with no cooldown is really, really good. That destroys so many builder rounds. It kills Proboscis, it kills Crow's Nest. There's a long list of items, I'm not going to go through them all, but this just straight up wrecks a lot of builds. Now, I do want to go out on a limb and say I don't think this counters Jabalian Drum Pig. I saw people on the Reddit cheering at Jabalian Drum's demise. What Jabalian Drum? What self-respecting Jabalian Drum Pig is letting you live for 8 seconds? Now, admittedly, you can view this as a large item, stick a battery on it, and it's basically a 5-second cooldown. That's more feasible. But at 5 seconds, they've already scaled a lot of damage and have infinite haste for the rest of the fight. It might still be enough. I don't really think this is a counter to Jabalian Drum. It's just kind of slow. And that's largely why I'm not super hyped for it at 8 seconds. But these are the sort of numbers that are very prone to being changed, not just after release, but even before release sometimes. So also, I don't know if I want this to be that strong in the first place because I hate matchup RNG items. I'm not going to enjoy matching into somebody with an unstable Gravo and instantly losing because they were running one card that deleted my build. I'm hyped for this card. It's sort of like Caltrops to me, where yes, I hate matchup RNG based cards. I don't like things that are super volatile in terms of how different builds interact with it. But for some reason, I just really like the card, even though it goes against everything I generally feel about game design. That's where I'm at with Unstable Gravwell. Like, yeah, it's going to be super random and volatile, and I'm going to hate it to bits. And also, I love him. Please don't hurt him. That's where I'm at with Unstable Gravwell. It's a very cool card. But we still have a couple more cards to get things flying in Dooley, including the hover tech. There are a lot of mediums here. Middle is getting even less consistent in Dooley. It's a medium tech, silver starting tier, 4-second cast, one other item starts flying. Because that item is in parentheses, I feel like we can assume the way this scales is with the items going up to 2 and 3. It has the passive text, when you crit with a flying item, it stops flying, and your flying items have plus 50% crit chance. I think hover text is unambiguously really, really cool. I don't know how strong it is as a baseline value. Hover tech is a great example of why I was just like, I don't really understand the new Dooley stuff. It seems incredibly cool. If this were a stealth item, I'm like, oh boy, I can't wait to cook with this. But in 140 non-flying cards Dooley, I'm like, every 4 seconds start one other item at random flying. I like at higher tiers, a diamond, every 4 seconds start 3, but like it's day 12 if it's diamond, right? I can't picture how this works. I like what the text says, I just can't envision it in a game. So I'm gonna move right along to Levitation Pad, a bronze small tech item, 4-second activation. If the item to the left of this is flying, haste it for 1 second, presumably that's what scales with tier. And if it's not, the item to the left of this starts flying. So that's just targeted flight. That's very, very good for a variety of reasons. Anything that cares about flight's gonna care about this. I will note, obviously, if you're playing Launcher Core Dooley, Stell Vendors and Pearls get a lot better because it gives you access to Stell's massive array of flight cards. But yeah, if you care about flying a specific thing, Levitation Pad is about as premium an effect as it looks like as Dooley will get for specifically flying that one item. Now, what reasons do we actually have to care? Because so far, aside from Launchpad reveal doing a lot of burning and a hover tech giving you some crit chance and Propeller Hat giving you some haste, we haven't really had a reason to be doing this. None of these are like, maybe Launchpad. Maybe you get to like a 20 base burn Launchpad over the course of a game, you go out on 10 to 12, and you just do enough burn off of a Launchpad that it can win the run, right? I can see Launchpad, but generally most of these don't feel like the reason you're playing a flight build, just supporting pieces. So what are we doing? Well, we're getting on board the party float, baby. It's a large vehicle and tech item starting at gold tier. Every 4 seconds, a friend starts flying, and when you use a flying item, shield 50. Your flying items cooldowns are reduced by 10%. I don't know how that's going to scale with tier. I would hope it's both numbers. I would hope they both double. It's probably more like when you use a flying item, shield 100, and their cooldowns go up by 15%. Not sure. But that's a really, really strong effect. Obviously, we saw back in the Dualtron meta that it's really, really nice to be able to reduce cooldowns. That's just a very, very powerful effect for friend builds. You can imagine a really stupidly fast, permanently hasted DJ Robot party float build doing an obscene amount of shield. And it does get into the sort of pig situation where you start being more reliant on damaging enchants because generally speaking, those DJ Robot builds aren't particularly great at killing your opponent. You're going to want something like Burning or Obsidian on the party float. But even so, this is a really, really strong defensive item. Like if you pick this up on day 5 and you already have, DJ Circuit Breaker, not DJ Robot, he's been rebranded. But yeah, I can envision a world where this is very, very strong. I don't think it's like the hypest thing in the world, but it's basically just me not being super confident in the friend archetype because it was nerfed and then a bunch of the friends got bonked in the previous patch after the nerfs. And I was like, ooh, is there room for a party float in it? And I think there probably will be. I'm interested in playing with this, and if there's not, I'm interested in seeing the balance changes that get to be good numbers. Someone once said in one of my card reviews, you shouldn't care if a card looks overpowered or underpowered. You should say it and give the feedback. What you should care is, does the card design look sick as hell? Is it good for the long-term health of the game? And I think Party Float looks sick as hell. I think generally the Dooley flight stuff looks cool. But the reason I really like Party Float is because once the numbers are sorted out, whatever they need to be at, I like this style of card. I think it's a very cool design area. Now, there's one more major payoff for flight, and that is Pterodactyl. I love this card. Pterodactyl is a large friend dinosaur weapon starting gold tier with a 14-second activation. This starts or stops flying. That's it. That's all the active does. When it stops flying, deal 1,000 damage. When you use a dinosaur or a flying item, charge this 2 seconds. Obviously, you don't want this to take 28 seconds to deal 1,000 damage. What you want this to do is already be flying and get charged non-stop. So it's like every 5 seconds, activate this, and it was already flying because of like the hover tech, not the hover tech, the levitation pad, right? You want this to be like a 1,000 damage 5-second cast. That's how you build this. And while it does work with dinosaurs, aside from specifically Dinosaur, I imagine that you could do like Dinosaur, Hamlet, Pterodactyl, Chris Army Knife, find one other tool. The launcher core is not a friend, right? All the friends are here using it, which is adorable. But yeah, it's not a friend itself. I can imagine finding a way to have Dinosaur be a part of this, but I don't think the other dinosaurs really have any overlap with Pterodactyl. It's just like nice for flavor. But I do really like this design. Again, similar to Party Float, where the numbers aren't crazy or scaling, similar to Launchpad, where I don't think you're going to be able to buff the burn enough to win reliably on like day 14 plus, unless you're finding Blaze Owl Warden. I look at Pterodactyl and I don't see like a super late game prospect with him, but this looks very strong. This reminds me a lot of, I was gonna say Dualtron, but honestly, I think Dualtron's like solid through day 14. It's not like 15 that Dualtron starts falling off. Pterodactyl's very strong when you get him early into gold. That's what I'm getting at here. I really like this effect. I think if you can make this thing function, it's going to be incredibly powerful. And Pterodactyl is one of those cards where it gets revealed, and I am immediately hyped for the guy. He's also just sick as hell. I love the card art for him. I don't mention card art when I'm doing card reviews. I just don't. But like, have you seen Pterodactyl? I love that design. He's wonderful. But there are 2 more cards left. They're not really core parts of the flight archetype. Every expansion, you always have a couple of weird hanger-on cards that are doing some niche effects and rounding out the card pool and not directly related to the main thing. So let's wrap up these first impressions with the last 2. One of them is Chaff. It's a small tech. When an adjacent item burns, shield 10. And when an enemy would destroy your items, this is destroyed instead. There are not a lot of builds that can just give up board space for Chaff because your opponent might have item destruction. That situation can happen, and it's neat that this exists, but at the cost of making Andy less consistent, the existence of this card is basically a nerf in my eyes. I don't find Chaff interesting. I find it like a Band-Aid pretends to counterplay to item destruction when it's not going to stop. It's not counterplay. Don't lie to me. That's how I feel about Chaff. When an adjacent item burns, shield 10 is like theoretically cool, but not that many items burn that quickly. This could be really crazy with like very specifically a burning shield core, I guess. That's kind of all I've got. I don't see very many situations where Chaff is going to get to shine as a passive item. It seems to me like predominantly this is going to be good if item destruction becomes incredibly meta, but it has to be so common for it to make sense to run Chaff because you can't see your opponent's board before you fight them. So like, you really going to give up an item slot and do, I mean, I say in Dooley. It used to be at its most premium in Dooley, but honestly, there's no character that's regularly able to cut an item for no massive cost. And lastly, we come to the radar module. It's a small tech item starting silver tier. When an enemy uses an item, items adjacent to this gain 3% crit chance for the fight. I think this is going to be really, really strong in the early to mid game, especially if you're playing a shield core. If you're playing something that's going to drag out the game, that's the point of the shield core here. Because in the late game, what are you talking about scaling up off your opponent's build? You're going to let yourself get blown up by one-shot builds. You're giving up item slots that are crazy important adjacencies and Dooley with stuff like Metronome. So many critically important small items that just on their own do so much for you. I don't think Radar Module as a late game item makes any sense, but as an early and mid-game item, I think Radar Module looks like one of the most efficient things you can possibly put on your board, and I am not looking forward to playing with it, to be honest with you, because it doesn't give you 100% crit in most matchups. It's going to get you in that like 30 to 60% range where the match is a super random if it's close at all. Whether or not you crit will likely determine whether or not you win. It's going to be very volatile. But that's me not liking mid values of crit. As a player, that is nothing bad about the game design or the card. I think the card's very strong. I like cards like this where they're clearly very powerful in the early game, but once you start getting into the late game, you find reasons to replace them. That's very much where Radar Module lives, and I like the card a lot. Not as much like Pterodactyl. I still don't really understand how you're supposed to build into the flying archetype without having just gotten all the cards already. I'm not sure exactly what the best combination of support cards for it will be. I hope Party Float's also excellent, although I see a base value of 50 shield on a gold item and I'm not convinced by it. But I do want it to be fantastic. I want to see Party Float and Pterodactyl both being very effective. And I'm interested in seeing how this launcher core plays out. Because, like, it's got to be better than it looks, right? That's how I feel about it. I don't really understand. Like, when you're telling me that I'm giving up weaponized ignition core to play a thing, then, like, there could be balance coming. There probably is balance coming. But the point is that when I pick a core, there are cores that are like, we're winning day 2, we're carrying the mid game. And then the launcher core is like, dude, put him in the slingshot, it'll be sick. And all right, I'm here for it. I like the idea the cards look cool, but from a meta grinding perspective, trying to win games, I genuinely don't know what we're doing. I feel like I'm the Armadillo here. I feel like Dooley and the Kimsdale are having a blast, and I'm just angrily staring at the launcher core like, but how's it win though? I think it will be good. I'm having a hard time envisioning the process of getting there. And once we get to play with this set, it'll start making more sense. Anyways, for now I'm done. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.